So I think the piston goes on the end of there. I think that's correct. Is that correct, Sean?
You are fucking amazing.
Yeah, the piston definitely goes on the end of there. Alright guys, Pit Bike Sonic here, and in today's video we are going to be rebuilding the new 2024 CW engine that we're going to be using in the 2024 Fab Racing Championship and all the other little pit bike things we're going to be doing. So today we're going to be, the engine's already stripped down, you would have seen that video from a couple of months ago. So today we're going to be putting it all back together, and I'm going to be showing you guys all this new stuff that's going in. And just giving you all guys hints and tips on what I think you guys should do in these horrible cold winter months, waiting for the weather to get nice again, and what you should be refreshing on your engine and just getting it ready for the new season. So let's show you guys what's behind me now, and these are all the new bits that are going to be going on my 2024 engine. So here are all the new bits that will be going in. Obviously we've got gasket sets, we've got a new cylinder and brand new piston there with the rings. We obviously got the new thing that we talked about in the video and we stripped down, the most common problem with these pit bike engine, the dog legs. When you have traditionally hear that third gear, these wearing away here. I can compare old to new. So you've got this little lip on the end here on the new ones, and then as you can see on the old ones we've got nothing, and you can see the wearing on the edges there. That's what's going to be causing your slipping, or I'll do my perfect impression of it. That's the noise you're going to be hearing, guys. So that's your new one and that's your old one. So obviously we're going to be replacing that today for them. Got new valves as well. All of this stuff's come from Parker Racing, guys, so easy accessible. And yeah, so these are all the bits we're going to replace. The old engine there, Sean, is now making a start. We're going to go through putting everything back together and showing you guys what we need to do. Right, so rebuild begins. We're starting to put things back together now. Sean will describe what's going on. Shall we say that?
Crankshaft.
So I think the piston goes on the end of there. I think that's correct. Is that correct, Sean?
You are fucking amazing.
Yeah, the piston definitely goes on the end of there.
Yeah.
This goes round and round, and that makes motion that will make the engine move.
Yeah. Are you going to call this one a highly technical vlog?
Yes,
are you?
Definitely.
Awesome. People are going to really appreciate that.
So these are the old dog legs.
That's the one. That's the one that's not too bad. You can keep that one as a spare.
Yeah.
So it's always the same. This one's always the bad one. One of them's always the bad one. And generally speaking, if you've just got a tiny little bit on, like a little nick, you can just see there. Then that's fine. That one could go back in because it's Jay and I'm rinsing for all the money he's got. I'm just going to put both in.
I'm sure they don't cost a lot of money.
No, well, they come as a pair anyway. So.
And there are the fresh ones going on. You don't get the whole thing, do you, Sean?
You can. If you want a technical, you can buy them as a complete unit. They're not that much more expensive. The drums aren't that expensive, but when
they're easier fit though. Just to
you literally just pull the pin out, drop the pin out, and then you just put it back in again, put the clip through, and then refold it back over again. As with everything, if anyone's ever attempting this and hasn't before, you can't really go too far wrong with oiling everything you do. So I've already put like just sort of doused this in oil, and I'll douse the gearbox in oil, and I'll douse the forks in oil, and the bearings and everything. It just helps it on that first fire up. You don't want to be putting everything together dry. So that's your first generic tip for this sort of work.
If you're racing pit bikes, especially in a supermoto environment, you're going to be changing these a lot.
So for example, I always just have a clean tub of oil there. All I do like that, for example, there, just douse the forks. And then to do this, you assemble these in your hand. I've done this a few times, but yeah, you just put both forks in so they engage like that. So yeah, just pre-assemble it all in your hand like that. Go above, slide it in, and then just gently rotate this shaft. Don't push down on it because you'll tear the seal out. So just sort of keep rolling it gently left and right, and it'll all sit down and seat itself like that. Some good finger work there. Right, and the last thing you put in before you close the cases up is the... Jay will tell you what it is, because Jay's already identified what's missing.
Have I?
Jay knows he's inside out.
The flux capacitor.
Yeah, that's right, the kickstart shaft.
Ah, yes, the kickstart shaft, yes. I want to get rid of that because I'm buying one of those MotoGP style rolling road things, and then I can take that out then, can't I?
You can do whatever you want, Jay. Another one that again, is really quite common for missing. So on the output shaft, always make sure you refit your washer on there. And probably now 80% of engines, because they're all probably newer than 5 years old, there's no washer on here. If you have one of the older engines, I mean, I don't know the exact year, but it's probably at least 5 years ago now, they used to come with a 1/2 mil washer on there as well, so just be mindful if that was on there when you took it out. It'll probably have to go back in, but if you bought a new gearbox, you won't have to fit that washer, just fit the gearbox as it comes.
That is a brand new gasket.
Don't miss your dowels off. Again, bearing could be in either half, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be on the cross, sit on there. And then obviously take this half. I've already sort of cleaned the gasket surfaces, so make sure they are clean. And then all we do is you just drop that on there like that. And again, same thing, do not smack these things with a hammer. A bit of patience, a bit of wiggling. Like that, and they should slide on.
Lovely. Just so we can remind the viewers again, what is the most common area where they crack again? It is this side.
Yeah, it's this side here. So it's on the, if you like, it's the middle set. It's the right-hand crankcase, but it's the one that's covered by the clutch side.
Common problem for
YXs. It's just keep an eye on this piece. When you take it apart, and this is why I always recommend, if you start having that third gear problem, don't just run it and run it and run it, because what happens is, as that constant sort of jumping out of gear happens, this shaft hammers the aluminium ring out from around here.
If you guys want to go...
So if you see a crack around here, or it's completely disappeared off, you want to be replacing this half the crankcase.
Yes, and if you want to see the, what shall we say, the way of not doing it and keep running with it going, go back and watch my Rara video. You'll see what happened to my engine where I had kept doing it, riding the bike for those rounds. I think I rode it for about 2 rounds of it doing that, and it just destroyed the whole lot, and the whole engine has to pretty much go in the bin. So that's the gearbox all in now, that case on, new gasket in between. Next up, I believe, I think it's stuff like flywheel and things like that now. I think
that's the exact opposite.
Oh, there you go. Oh.
Please do not put your engines together without a torque wrench, all right? The biggest thing that ever happens is the amount of strip threads Jack Andrews that's ever happened in the history of racing, Jack Andrews. It's just like, just use a torque wrench.
Jack Andrews.
Jack Andrews.
A lot of people ask me on the channel, why does oil leak from here sometimes? Obviously a rubber bung goes in front of it, you're about to see that, but Sean is going to tell you why oil sometimes does leak from that hole in the engine. Sean?
Because it's a hole in the engine, that's why oil leaks from it, which is why the rubber bung goes into it. But what I've always done is this, the same sort of very standard gasket sealant that you use to blob on the cylinder head. All I do, let's just put a really thin, let's put a little thin scrape.
What is the reason for the hole in the engine?
It's literally what's holding the selector drum over, so that's the bolt that holds the selector drum into one side, so you need to leave it in there, can't take it out, but obviously it's open to the oil inside, hence the rubber bung. But at the end of the day, it's a rubber bung.
And this is the only seal you ever use in these engines, isn't it? You don't recommend people using gasket seal or anything like that, do you?
What do you mean? Well, I'm just put gasket sealant on. That's what I'm saying, put a little bit of gasket sealant on.
Yeah, but you don't use any on the gaskets that are in the engine.
No, don't stick the gaskets down, they don't need it. Again, if you torque everything up evenly around the crankcase, they don't leak randomly from halfway. As long as you've prepped them correctly and you've shaved off the old gasket and you haven't scored any of the faces, so you've left an oil channel. I've never had one of these things leak randomly from nowhere, unless there's been a problem like a crack or a split. So
yeah, if you just put a bit of sealant on this rubber bung, then you shouldn't have any oil leaks coming from there, and there is this little tab to keep it in place. Again, a lot of this is from a Gen 4, so Gen 4s use this, Gen 3s don't, but the hole is there, so if you ever want to get hold of this, you can just buy it, just find it somewhere, you'll be able to buy it and fit it. Just literally stops that tab just walking its way out. So again, it's a really cheap thing to do, just to, again, guarantee, with a bit of sealant on there and that, it ain't going to be leaking. If anyone ever doesn't remember, so people will look at what I'm doing here and just be like, how do you remember what bolts you're doing? So, as with anything, there's different lengths. So there's 3 longs on this particular bit. When you look at it now, if you look at the engine now, these 2 here, I think, well, there's 2 specific length ones, which are the ones that go at the front and the back. Like that. And then it's quite simple, because the 3 long ones go in the 3 holes along the bottom, and the 2 next size go in that 2 there. If you're never not sure, put all the bolts in the engine like that, don't do them up. Look round, and you'll notice they're all protruding the same sort of amount. You'll have that sort of like
10 to 12 mil poking out, all of them. If you're ever not sure, whenever you've done things with bolts, that's all you have to do, is put them all in loosely, make sure they all protrude about the same amount, and then you can tighten them up, because you know you're not going to under thread or over thread any of them. But I just know because I've done this before. Hang on a minute. Another thing just to note, be aware of, people do this when it's still together loose, this gasket, because the only thing supporting it is here and down here, means that this whole section in the middle can drop. So what I do, again, just take any other long bolt out of the engine. I'm just going to take this long M6 here, just thread that through from the back. Don't force it in, just wiggle the gasket around till you get the hole to line up, like that, and then just leave that in there while you get all the other bolts in place. And then what that means is when you come to put the clutch cover on, when you've nearly finished, you don't discover that the gasket's masking the hole and you've tightened the whole thing up. So all you do there
just keeps everything in place.
Just exactly. So as soon as we've done these up, we can just take that out, because it'll have located and we'll have pinched the crankcases up so it isn't going to go anywhere. But again, that's another tip, because otherwise what you have to end up doing, you end up just winding the bolt through the gasket. You potentially rip and tear the gasket. So sometimes when you see them leaking up here, it's nothing weird, it's not anything fancy, it's because when someone put it together, because we're going to cut
went through the gasket.
We're going to cut this piece away, and what they'll have driven the bolt through, and it will have moved the gasket out of the way.
Yeah, they didn't go through the whole of the gasket, they went through the gasket.
Exactly, and then they leak out that top portion.
Listen to me sound like I know what I'm talking about.
You're just copying what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm simplifying, I'm dumbing it down for people.
Gasket tear, bike leak.
And for the viewers, what torque setting are we talking here for these?
Crankcase bolts like this, I do them all at 10, and then I just go around and do them all at, then just do them all at 12. Another very important thing, just before I did these up, just make sure that the crankcase is fully sealed all the way around, as in you're not driving it together with the bolts, because you might have missed something off, got a wrong washer in, and then you're going to potentially bend something. And also just make sure as soon as you've done it all up that you have a little bit of free play in those two shafts. We should be talking about 0.5 mil to 1 millimetre, that they both spin freely. Again, I'd already put this in neutral, so like you can see that these all spin nice and freely. Make sure the crank turns nice and freely. Basically just making sure that when we've just done this up now, we haven't pinched something. Just to clarify all these things, and again, if any of you guys attempt it, I've made the mistakes back when I first started building engines. I've done over 100 of these now, at least. So over the years, I've just picked up these little tips that just help make sure that obviously you don't cause any unnecessary damage. I've had to repeat some of my own engine builds when I got near to the end, because I've realised I've missed something out or made a mistake. So just make sure all these things spin. Like I say, just like that, you just want a little bit of movement in both shafts. No more than that.
A lot of people would be thinking that's something to worry about, but
no. You need quite the opposite. If they're lock solid and you can't move them, then you need to take it apart and understand what's going on. Because if you run it with no end float in there at all, when it gets hot and the gears start expanding, you're just going to have a gear seize on a shaft or something similar like that. Or even if it manages to survive, you have a loss of power, because there's quite a lot of resistance. Gasket away once it's all tightened up, so then you get that nice neat gasket top and bottom of the barrel. So piston rings, you get 5 rings in a pack. If you put them the wrong way up or in the wrong place, it don't work. Matt Lindley, and it will smoke like a pig. So basically you've got the 3 rings associated to oil scraping, which is basically the 2 really thin ones. They look similar, but they're basically the thin ones. You'll tell they're both the same. And then you've got the little oil scraper, so that's the oil scraping lot that go in the bottom channel. And then you have the 2 compression rings. So they've both got markings on them. You might not pick up on really clearly, but it doesn't matter what it says, but they've both got a marking on the top side that faces upwards. The all black ring goes on first in the lower channel, and the top one is the one with the shiny edge. And like I say, on both of those 2, doesn't matter about the oil scrapers, both of these 2, they must face upwards with the writing up. The other thing you must do is when you fit it, another little tip for you, because the piston in the barrel is going up and down like that way towards you, it also rocks ever so slightly this way. So what you do is you always make sure when you put the compression rings on that they face, one faces to the right and one faces to the left. Don't line up the slot in both compression rings in the same place, because you're basically creating an easy leak path, especially as these engines don't actually run that tight of tolerance in most cases between the piston and the barrel.
Well, that made complete and utter sense to me.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. I can't even dumb it down that much for you, to be honest.
I got that a little bit.
Yeah, it's not rocket science. So to put the oil scraper rings on, you put the inner sort of perforated one on first. Just drop that into the groove. It's got a T section, which means you have to put it in first, because you can't squeeze it past these, because these basically trap it in place. And all you do, just again, don't overstretch them, but again, you won't go too nuts, and then they just drop in. The first one drops in the top of the ring. So this is going in the same ring as that perforated piece, and it just lines up nicely like that. And we'll drop the other oil scraper in again, so it's facing the other way. So again, one oil scraper facing left, one oil scraper facing right. and that drops in just below like that. So the end result is a neat, nothing's protruding, nothing's sticking up. And again, I've just started to rotate it, but I just want to find where I just put the opening of the ring. So one opening of the ring is there, the top one, and the other one's on this side. He says that's not the side, that's the side. Rotate it 90 degrees. And then again, so first compression ring, the all black one, lettering face up. Again, we can rotate it once it's in place, but I'm going to roughly put it down in the right way. Again, it might just get stuck, it's fine. Again, don't over force it. And just put that one into the groove above the oil scraper. And then the other one facing the other way. Again, lettering up. This is the one that's got a slightly silvered edge. Face the other way. So they're both facing opposite directions, like that. Okay. Really important as well, when you put the piston in, the larger groove cutout says in on it for input, and obviously, as you all know, your carburetor sits on the top of the engine, so make sure when it goes in you don't put it in upside down, because otherwise your valve will be hitting the piston. Alright, so to confirm that's piston now in place. Again, they're a bit fiddly, and there's not much I can tell you for a tip for these, except if you've got the ones that have got the central clip, the clip with the central piece in it, they're quite easy to do with a pair of pliers. If you've got the open ring type that's just a C-ring, you have to pee about with a flat nose plier or whatever, something like a flat nose screwdriver just to get them in. If you overstretch those or they lose their stretch completely, I do recommend you just throw them away and get hold of another set of clips. You can actually just buy the clips from some of the bike shops, they're really cheap. But again, so it's in, we've got in facing up. We've got the top ring facing to the left or to the right, it doesn't matter which, as long as the next ring down, the black ring, is facing the opposite direction. So they're both facing, and everything, all the oil scraper ring, all the gaps, basically, when I say facing, I mean the gaps are all this way. There's no gaps top to bottom.
Lovely, so I guess it's the cylinder next.
Yes. Yeah, but
the new one.
But I say that I'm not going to do the cylinder straight away because I've got to rebuild the head. Because again, I'm not going to put the cylinder on because we're going to put gasket sealant on.
Yes.
And I want to do everything all at once and clamp it up while that's still obviously wet.
Okay.
So
is this where we have a break and go to Nando's?
Yeah, why not?
Yay! Nando's time. Right, we'll be back later.
2 hours later.
Right, so we've just come back from a lovely Nando's. Comment below, tell me what your Nando hotness is on the scale. Are you a lemon and herb or are you an extra hot? I went hot today, but I feel that it was more medium than hot because it didn't cause me any problems like it normally does. Right, so that's all the bottom end done, piston in. It's now time for the top end now, and for this we have new valves. What else do we have, Sean? That's it, isn't it? New valves. Valves and stem seals, whatever they are.
They're the valve seals.
That is what they are.
Lapping valves in. So when you buy your brand new valves, you could just bung them straight in. But what you want to do, again, minor gains, but it's also some good practice for engines. You want to just lap the valve seat, which is this area here, the silver portion, basically into what it sits against in the head. The other reason being, when you look, I don't think the camera will pick it up, but if you look really closely or if you check your own head, you may see on the seat little tiny black spots, little black regions. Don't think that camera's going to focus on it, mate. No. It's really small.
I don't have a good enough camera.
But those little pitted areas, basically, they're like blow by. So when your valve's shut or just as opening, the sort of the gases and the compression can start to leave through there. Lapping valves in is super simple. You can buy the bits off like Amazon or any shop that literally costs peanuts. It's like a really simple wooden stick with rubber suction ends and some very simple fine valve lapping paste. All you do, you just put a little bit on the edge of the seat of the valve like that, just put it into per place. For this, I would recommend doing it with the stem seals out. So the seals which sit on here, I've removed the old ones. They only cost like a pack, it's like 3 or 4 quid. Take the old ones out so it spins freely. Just don't forget to refit them, the new ones afterwards. And literally all you have to do is just that action there, bounce up and down to resettle the valve, bounce, and you just do this. And you do this until you get an even. And basically, when you look at the seat of the head, basically remove any of the sort of black marks will disappear, and it should just look like a nice, smooth, polished surface. And your valve will just end up with a dark ring area on it.
You're getting a better seal.
Yeah, basically, yeah. You're just improving. It's only minor. It's all minor, but it's just good practice.
When you've only got 14 horsepower, though, these tiny little things are all going to help.
Important thing though, when you're done, so like I said, this will take a little bit of time, or it depends how bad the pitting is. Sometimes it can be really bad, sometimes it's really quick. Just make sure you remove all traces of that abrasive paste, because you don't want that rumbling around when it mixes with your oil, because it will make short work of certain elements. So, but when you've finished, you just want to be looking, just checking, so you get a nice really positive silver ring, and you get rid of all the little dark dark spot areas. This one's not too bad, so to be fair, I'll just do another. This one probably only take another little bit more. Sometimes you could spend 15 minutes doing this, depending how bad it is.
But all these little gains are going to help. So there we can see the clean side that Sean has just done, and we can see the side that's not been touched yet, and you can really see the difference.
Putting the valves in now, so just new stem seals, brand new out of the packet. All you do with these, nothing complicated. You literally just push them on with your finger, so it's a bit of a juggling act, all fingers and thumbs, but you just rest it on top of the valve like that. On the, not top of the valve, sorry, the valve seat. Get it square, and then just gently, with the flat of your finger, just pop it on. Just pops on like that. Look down there so you'll see better. There you go. You just push them on. No tools or anything needed for those. You just literally just push them on. Make sure they're square as you can before you push down, and then just just push down. Don't use any tools. You don't want to damage that steel lip on the top. That's what's doing your sealing from the oil, keeping oil out of your head. So you just gently push them down, and then you can start putting the valves back in again. So these are the new valves. We've cleaned off the seats from the valve lapping paste. Springs back in. It's worth pointing out for this, you will need a valve compression tool. Again, not expensive or complicated to use. So again, these not particularly expensive, just a simple cheap set. This was off Amazon, probably cost like 20 quid. But you do need to do it because you need to use this to wind the valve back, compress the top again.
Right, so the valves are all back in. This is the cam now going back in. Obviously Z40 cam. This is a W Racing Z40 cam.
Which, if you can get hold of, I say get hold of it, you should be able to get hold of it, but that's the one you want if you're going to buy a racing cam. Get the W Racing cam. Yeah, the
W Racing cam. That's the one you want. They're a bit older, aren't they?
They've been around since the beginning. It's the one it's got a W symbol on it, or you can't miss it when you see it online. But that's the one that's the
better one.
The better cam. And again, just another quick tip there. If you can see in there, well, it doesn't matter if you can't, but in this side, in one end of these rods, there's an M8 thread. If you put that facing outwards, then it's much easier to extract them when you want to take them out next time. If you push them in the other way around, there's nothing to grip onto, and they're a bit of a pain to pull out. So just be aware there is actually a threaded side to those. Again, same thing, bit of clean oil. Slide in, spacer goes in first. And if you can't get it in, like you see this one's a little bit tight, the valves are completely brand new, so all you have to do is we'll set the valve clearances later on anyway, so you just loosen the valves off. It's just because this one's, again, it's brand new, valve's new, could be a slightly different length, so just loosen it off so it slides in nicely. And like I say, we'll set valve clearances when the head's all back on, so yeah, that'll be loose now. Undo this side. Don't forget to set those clearances, tighten it up, but for now I'll just loosen that off. Right, that's the head. We'll just do this face plate. Alright, so that's head all back together.
All head is back together now, so valves in, cams in. I believe now we're going to be putting that on the new engine, I guess.
Yeah.
Our all new gasket set. Obviously we're not going to be running a normal paper gasket in between here, because we have obviously got a metal gasket that is going to give us that little bit of horsepower extra. If any of you guys don't know, the fab rules now will now match pretty much the BMB rules. There is a bit of difference if you get caught over the horsepower limit, but when it comes to the rules, they're pretty much exactly the same now. So you can run up to 15 horsepower at fab now, and luckily we have now got a dyno that will be coming to random rounds that will regulate that. So yeah, 15 horsepower is the limit now. Me and Sean reckon this engine, with the mods that we've done, so with a light and flywheel, metal gasket, the Z40 cam, we are hoping, fingers crossed, we will be putting this on a dyno before the start of the season. We are, fingers crossed, aiming between 14.3 and 14.5. If any of you guys watched my vlog from way back when we did do a dyno test at Clay Pigeon, I think that was like 2021, with basically the same engine what this is, but that engine did have an electronic ignition. This has just got a standard one. We got 14.3. So if we can get that out of this one, which I think we can, it's basically going to do Spain and then we're going to the dyno with it. I'm hoping between 14.3 and 14.5.
So it's worth pointing out that this is what I always class as a standard build, in as much as this is what always used to go for like the previous rules of fab. This is a completely legitimate. It doesn't have any high comp piston, it doesn't have race valves, it doesn't have a skimmed head, it doesn't have a skimmed barrel, it doesn't have a 145 crank. It's basically just is literally stock. This is stock 140 parts, just built with the thin head gasket, which, like I say, is brought across because it's the same as the Z140 engines, and that's it. Put it together neat and tidy. Make sure you do things like the lapping of valves in, and all the other stuff, and yeah, it'll just produce a good solid mid 14. Don't go thinking that doing all this is going to put you straight onto 15. It's possible for them to come out of the box close, but because of the tolerances and stuff like that, it's very, very rare. A mid-14 engine with these sort of mods is kind of what you'd expect most of the time. So don't go building engines like this and think you're magically going to be over 15 horsepower. If you reliably want to achieve that, there's other things that you may have to do, but like I say, every engine's different. The only way you're going to know is get it on a dyno. The one advantage with fitting the adjustable ignition is if you do decide to put more performance parts on it, like race valves, race head, deck it in any sort of way, and you end up over 15, then with the adjustable ignition you can always wind it back and retard the ignition a little bit and, like I say, and basically tune it back to the power limit. But you just got to be a bit careful. They're very they're engines that don't react well to too much compression. So you can put too much compression on, they don't have enough mass, they don't have enough inertia, and they basically just won't pull it. In effect, you can have a lot of torque, a lot of compression, and they don't generate. You can basically, it kills the engine. They just won't rev. One of the strong suits of the 140 is they're a very high revving engine. It's why the 160s are far less popular. They have a lot more compression, but they're not actually quicker. And that's a very good example of an engine that produces more torque. The power's a little bit more, but in a standard guise, a 160 is really not that much faster than 140. No. And that's just to do with the amount of compression that a 160 has is almost too much. And the advantage of the 140 is how they rev and how they come off corners and how they keep going.
So there we go. There's a bit of information from the guru that is Sean Whitaker. So yeah, if anyone has this setup, it's going to be very difficult to be over that 15 horsepower, isn't it?
Yeah,
with what spec this engine is, you're only going to start getting close to that 15 horsepower or going over it when you start putting things in like high compression pistons and 145. What are they? 145 crank
or race heads.
Or race heads. You're going to be probably going over that 15 horsepower limit then, if it is put together correctly. So I want to stick with this spec engine because I know I'm going to be in, fingers crossed, you never know, but hopefully should be within that tolerance on the dyno. And like I said, we will be doing a video on that when I get back from Benidorm.
I think it's important to mention for a lot of people as well, you can go hunting to try and get as close to that 15.1 as you possibly can, but we've always used it as an example for fab for the last 2 or 3 years. The top, I mean, bar a couple of people, a good, 3 or 4 people in the top 5.
Yeah.
I built all their engines to this exact specification, nothing weird, nothing dodgy.
And they've won championships, they've won races.
And that's the point. And even when they go over to B&B where other people are pushing that much power, the box
they're still winning races.
And that's because of the fact that it's not just about trying to get the power, it's the fact they still rev very freely. You actually can get slightly more revs out of them as well.
Yeah.
So it is a balance. Don't just go chasing wildly to try and get 15.1. If your engine's putting out, say, 14.7, 14.8, even 14.9,
keep it there.
Guys, keep it there. Don't try and go chasing it, because you might find that you go and tune it and make it worse in terms of how fast you actually ride.
And obviously this is a reliability thing as well. You want an engine to last you the season, so you don't want to be pushing things that shouldn't be. So you want a good reliable engine. So yeah, so there's a bit of facts, guys, for you for this season's race, and hopefully for the next seasons to come in the Fab Championship, with the rules and best ways of keeping your engine tip-top and within the guidelines as well. So
just back on this build, like I say, just quickly to make sure you do not miss off that that little oil seal in there. I always do the same thing. I just put it there so I don't forget about it, and then you just gently, carefully just compress through. You can use a compression tool for this, but I've never found you need to, because again the tolerances on these are a little bit slack. You just gently compress the rings as you just sort of rock it in, and then once it goes in like that, I stand the engine upright, make sure the seal is in place. And then again, don't just shove it down, just gently tease it down like that so it goes in place. And once you've got that sort of, again, all I do there is just put the piece straight in and then just rotate the engine up to top dead centre, because then everything we're going to do later on, you've already got the piston at the top. So just wound that forward. I just put a little bit of oil in the barrel prior. So there we go, we're on brand new piston, brand new barrel. Let's wipe away that excess oil. And there she is, rotate the head. Some people again choose to put the cam chain tensioner on when they do that bit, but there's absolutely no reason to do that. It just gets in the way. You could trap it between the head, or damage your cam chain or something. You don't need to. You can easily fit it afterwards at this stage now. So I always do the same. Just get to this point now. I think I've said this before.
Yeah, in the last video, just make sure
it should
nice
run
and
freely
smooth.
over your finger, no kinking or anything else, or else replace them. The race cam chains are worth buying because they are much better quality. The Chinese ones tend to kink up incredibly quickly, so you could literally get a new one and it's done within the next one, but it just helps minimise them jumping. So again, that's all I do. You see, you just drop it down from above, feed it on there like that, and then you can refit your various wheels and your...
And we spoke when we took the engine apart, we've got that, the plunger thicker end thing. What was it called?
Yeah, that's going. Yeah, that's on the end of your on your plunger. The upgraded basically cam tensioner bung. Again, sold by a few people, but Parker does a particularly good pair in the acetal one or the brass one. Both are good options.
If you haven't seen it when this engine come apart, go back in the videos and check it
Well,
out.
we'll show people when we put it together in a sec. But it's definitely worth getting because, like I say, it's so cheap, but it's sold.
Yeah, massive reliability plus.
Just be aware when you're putting the dowels in, there's two holes that have got a little shoulder in it, so if you put it in the wrong one, it'll just disappear forever. So just make sure you push it in the one that you can see two little shoulders in. Didn't say it earlier, but on the base gasket to the barrel, there's a pair of dowels are on one side, and on the head they're actually diagonal, so do check in every sense. And again, so just to confirm, we're off cam, which means both valves are seated and the piston's at the top, so you're already speeding up when you come to do your valve timing, that you know you're not a million miles off. Completely forgot the head gasket, which is awesome. So fit your head gasket, get your studs lined up, and then at this point here, all you do again is take your cam chain, pass it through the gap. Again, don't whack it, just jiggle it till the dowels seat. You don't need to do any hitting to get these things together. Don't lose the cam chain at this point. I'm all for replacing all gaskets on engines. When you do them, you buy a full gasket set, just replace everything for the sake of what they cost. I don't even care if a gasket looks like it's seated properly, just replace it. And again, for removing old gaskets, don't scrape at it with a screwdriver or something, just use a Stanley blade on its own, and as long as you stay flat, don't go scratching with the tip, your damaged surfaces. As long as you just push square, you won't cause any damage to the machined face, because you're basically just scraping that gasket material away. Can take a little bit of time, but you've got no risk of damaging anything, just making sure you do things properly. So, again, watch out for these gaskets. They look symmetrical, they're not. You have to make sure you put them the right way up. The holes are ever slightly off kilter. And then the other really important one, which catches a lot of people out, the copper washer goes on that. As we're looking and facing forward, it's the bottom right. As you're looking at the head, it's the bottom left. So the copper one goes there, and that's because there's an oil feed running right up that stud. So it just gives it better sealing, or else you'll end up with oil weeping out the top of your head. Just to confirm, when you come to do up the head bolts, again, torque wrench always start with a slightly lower torque. So again, we'll torque these to 12, just over 12. So all I do is do 10 first, and you do it as a cross. This is just something you do on big engines with a lot more stem bolts, but you still do it on this. So just go, then you go diagonally across to the other side. Just helps pull it down evenly. Doesn't put anything on a twist. So that's 10, and then just wind it up to 13 and repeat that process. Okay, and then once you've done that, then pinch down, if you like, the two sort of side bolts. Don't do those first, just put them in loosely. Do the head bolt so it's nice and square, and then just pinch these ones up with a spanner. That's it, that's head. Well, no, we just need to do this now. So we know the piston's at the top because that's why we left it there when we did it earlier. That can be validated by taking your... Again, we'll refit this properly later on, so for now all I do is just pop that on, and you'll see straight away when you put it back on that the T will already be lined up with a mark at the top up here. So T for timing with a little mark on the top of the crankcase. That's because the piston was at the top, and because we're already off cam, which means that, like I say, the valves are all shut and the cam can just spin freely, there's no load on it. You just put the cam wheel straight in there, again with this dot facing forward. So we're basically on a T mark, the crank's the top dead centre, and then all we do is we just pop this in like that, get the cam. So we're not on the cam, make sure that it's facing forward. We're currently a tooth out, so all we're going to do is make that jump a tooth. I'm just going to wiggle it. It's still a tooth out. Yeah, a bit of a fiddle, need to rotate it forwards. Like that. So at this point here, and then all you do is rotate the cam. Right, now if we just check where that is on the T mark over here, you can currently see that we're one tooth down at the front. So we're in line at the back, at the front now. As you can see, I went one too many at the front. So if you look over here, you'll just see like these are
just a little bit out.
Misaligned, so it's one tooth out. So all I'm going to do is just roll it round, one tooth up, like that. And then, like you say, then the cam, which is free to rotate, you just get the holes to line up. And that's it. That's literally how all you do is tie these up.
The dot is with that little notch in the head.
Okay. Like I say, and it's important to say at this point, the reason, that's why we rotated the piston to the top of the barrel.
Because you're close.
Because right now this could be 100, this could be 180 degrees out, but we know the piston's at the top of the barrel, and we know everything lines up, so we know that's timed correctly. Don't need much to torque these up. These are just 10 Newton meters, and just leave the flywheel on. You can see I'm holding it with my other hand. It's just, that's all it takes, just to resist it. Don't need to wedge anything in there. Just, that's all that's needed. Okay. Now the reason I kept this side plate off is I wanted to make sure that this was nothing had jumped off. It's worth pointing out, we're just saying Jay's got to just fit the bung. So if you're looking at this, you can see that missing. That is going to be installed, so there's no bung on top of there. We are going to be fitting that before. It's just can't currently find it. Yeah,
the eagle-eyed viewers, I have missed out, and we did talk about that in the last video when we took it apart. But you can get uprated one of them instead of the rubber ones, save some wearing away. And giving you more engine problems than you need.
But it is going to be fitted, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we are going to fit one, don't worry. It's for some reason we've lost it, but you literally can go off Parker, Pit Bike Parts, Pit Bike Racing, you can order the upgraded ones. I'll be doing that. I'm not very mechanical stuff, but even I can fit one of them, so we're all good.
So, back as we just did it, so T at the top, dot facing forward, and we know the piston's at the top. If you're not sure about your engine, if it's all correct, T at the top, dot facing forward, take the spark plug out and literally just gently put something like a pick or a screwdriver gently in there, and you should feel the top of the piston, so you know everything's where it should be. And then just taking a feeler gauge, 0.1 feeler gauge, all we're then going to do is just set the valve clearances, just to basically just so it just nips the gauge. And I'll just use this tool again. You can buy these tools, makes it nice and simple. Just pinch that up, and just make sure that just slides in nicely like that.
What I'll do, guys, is I will put links to all of these tools that we've used, or the Pit Bike Pacific tools. I'll even put links in for things like flywheel pullers. I'll put a link in for setting the valves, and I'll put a link in for, what was that?
The valve compression tool.
The valve compression tool, so one of these. So I'll put links in below on Amazon and eBay of where you can get all these tools so you can do it yourself.
It's again, this is at the end of the day, everyone does it at their own risk. If you want someone to do it properly for you, then at the end of the day, pay the money. You know, people have got experience who've done it. But like anyone else, I didn't go to learn how to build engines. I just one day, again, I had a bit of mechanical background. You know, you just play with spanners, and
it's best.
These are a good
best thing to do is get a wrecked engine and give it a go yourself.
Or you've got an old engine you know is pretty badly done. Just take it apart, put it back together, see if it runs still. It's, you know, it is a bit of trial and error. It's a very accessible sport. You don't need to be scared of these. You don't really need to understand a huge amount. I mean, it is just a process at the end of the day.
You're not going to get much more simpler engines.
No, exactly. So if you want to give it a go...
For a 4-stroke engine, anyway.
Yeah, well, these are... Yeah, exactly. So if you want to give it a go, then give it a go. What's the worst that could happen? It's a pit bike at the end of the day.
They're, what, 300 quid for a new one?
Yeah, worst case scenario, if you've got the money and you just want to give it a go.
If you've got one that's got a duff third gear, a brilliant opportunity for you to take it apart and give it a go yourself.
But as I say, if you are serious about it and you really, obviously you don't have the experience, by all means, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just making some giving you some hints, tips, and all the rest. But at the end of the day, there's no.
I just want to make it clear in this. I do get a lot of people messaging. Sean does not do this as a business. He does a few of the bikes at the Fab Championship,
or mates, or just mates,
or mates and things like that.
But yeah, now at the end of the day, like I say, if you're not sure, then of course, and you want something serious, then do just pay the money. There's a reason for it. Even if you haven't learned anything from this video, except you can see there's a lot involved. and therefore, you know, paying the money you pay for businesses like Parker to do your engine, it's because you're using their experience and they know what they're doing. So by all means give it a go if you want to, but it's not yeah, if something goes wrong at the end of the day, it's on you. And that's especially important with regards to buying new bits. You know, if you buy a new piston or you buy new parts, build it yourself and then it goes bang, don't expect someone to be warranting anything that goes wrong. They are pit bikes at the end of the day. But when you do it properly, then they really are reliable. A lot of people may say otherwise, and it just comes down to poor maintenance or mistakes when building, but they genuinely are. They are robust bits of kit considering what we use them for.
It's just a shame about the third gears.
Yeah, the third gear is just an Achilles heel of them.
We are now.
So same thing, just replace any gasket. Honestly, it's like that same thing for what they cost. I don't care how well or good it looks like it was before. Yeah, it may well do the job. I'm not saying they won't, but just one of them things of doing it properly. There's a reason a gasket set comes with all the gaskets. And with this, just a little, it doesn't really matter. This is more just because people will go mental if they've got OCD about, oh, it's not even that. They just go OCD because if it looks wrong in your bike. So you just literally line that notch up. So when you're doing this up,
and it just helps you tighten it up on the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so go on.
Yeah, just pop the light and flywheel on. So just the back plate on. Just worth remembering there were 2 O-rings behind here, which you can't miss. So just press in the back. And this is the only part of a pit bike engine that I ever warrant. There is a torque setting for this, but it is awkward to hold it. And this is the only part of an engine that I ever say that you should do it with a rattle gun. Otherwise, you shouldn't have a rattle gun in sight. So all I do there is just give that a little blip. Nothing major. You don't have to go to town on it. The taper does all the driving. It's not actually, the bolt's not doing anything. It's just stopping it all sliding off. So don't think the bolt's doing a load of work. So all I do here is just that sounded like I did loads. It wasn't. It was just the very last bit of the thread. So that was just a couple of blips at the end that was actually taking the drive. This was set to low torque. So at this point, worth pointing out, as soon as you put this head on, just get in a habit of putting something like some clean rag or something on the intake. Again, another one of those best practice things, so you don't go dropping a bolt or something onto your intake side and discover when you fire up and you fire something straight through the intake. And now we can move on to the clutch and oil spinner side, or on these, sorry, actually no, this is being built as a Gen 3. So
if any of you guys ask why I run a Gen 3 instead of a Gen 4, I've mentioned it in other videos before. I cannot get a Gen 4 off the line. The clutch assembly is a lot different and I just find it bites really horribly, where with a Gen 3 it has a lot longer, shall we say, clutch adjustment on top of the engine here, and I just can get a lot better starts with them. So I've actually downgraded myself when really there is no difference. It's just a different side casing and you don't run an oil filter. So yeah, there is no difference. There is no power gains or anything like that. So I run Gen 3 just because I can get a hell of a lot better starts with the Gen 3 engine.
Important thing to note when you put the crank gear on first, which is the small one, don't just drop it on. Make sure you turn the oil pump gear, the nylon oil pump gear behind it, to make sure it engages. Really easy to get that line not aligned, get it all on, then blap it on with a gun or something, and then you literally just break teeth off your oil pump. So make sure that engages, and then put the big gear on the top. Again, we'll come around to doing that up. So yeah, say that is a Gen 4 arrangement.
We're going to need another tool here, aren't we?
In a bit, the castle, yeah, the castle not tool, but again, I'll do the other bits first, so I'll put these on as well. So the order of events here, just in case you're not sure, first thing that has to go in is the gear shaft. That literally just feeds through. Feeds through to the other side. Make sure you engage both two things at once. You hold the spring down at the top where my finger is, and then get the 2 holes lined up, and just push it down, and then let go at the top so it locks into place. Then you put the detent over the top, which is this little roller arrangement, making sure you don't lose the little tiny washer that lives on there. So that actually sits over the top. Don't do that the other way around because it won't work. So you just start the thread. All I do, look, if you look from the side, start the thread with it sitting on top, and then as soon as it gets some resistance, then push it down. If you try and preload it with your finger before you get the thread started, you'll just wreck the thread starting it. And if you just do that, that's easy. Again, we'll talk this up now. Tool a lot of people don't have, but really cheap, just 90-degree circlip pliers, external circlip pliers, because you need that for both of the other bits. So you've got the lower kickstart idler gear, which goes big washer first, then the gear face down with the ratchet facing down, another big washer, and then the circlip pliers. Again, don't overstretch circlips, just enough to get it over the top. And you can literally just push it down with your finger until it clicks in, and the circlip might spin freely in the groove, but you haven't overstretched it. And then the important other one, which sometimes confuses people, which is the little washer goes on first, because that has to space the gear off, otherwise it wears away the detent arm. Drop the kickstart gear on, engaging it. If you need to push the shaft up with your finger from the other side, just make sure there's enough, and then just again, same thing, just don't overstretch the circlip. Just pop it over the top and then push it down with your fingers so it clicks in. Again, make sure it's definitely engaged, and that's your kickstart idler setup. For clutch baskets, just have a look out for wear on these tangs. Again, they're quite soft. These ones, you'll see little markings, but as long as they're not really pronounced, like these ones, you can see a little bit of light polishing, but they're not really ridgy and notchy. If they get really ridgy and notchy, they literally don't let the clutch plates move apart smoothly, and you get a very jerky pull away. So yeah, just do that. So the first thing on, basket goes on, engages with both gears. You might have to turn the kickstart idler gear on this side, just to make sure the clutch drops down, so that it's now engaged with both crank and kickstart side. Another important one, courtesy of our friend Matt Lindley, you can do this the wrong way around. If you put the big blocky splined washer on first, rotates it half a turn,
and that locks in place.
And then you put the pegged washer teeth down to lock that in place like that.
Lovely.
Then you take the clutch inner, engage it with the outside, and then all you do is you keep lifting it on and off, or sort of look down, and then rotate the input shaft.
So it all goes
so you get it, so it all lines up at once. Otherwise you'll spend ages. So you just get to the point where it lines up, and then again make sure the clutch plate. So again,
there it goes.
So it'll just drop right on the middle like that. Okay, and then again your Belleville washer, which is your slightly coned dished washer, goes on. Now a little trick at this point, because you can buy clutch holding tools, there's all sorts of weird stuff you can do, but if you just install 2 springs, get hold of yourself 2 sort of large M6 penny washers. These are nothing to do with the engine, they're just separate parts. Just screw them in place like that. You can't fit the clutch centre because you can't access the clutch nut behind it, so you wouldn't be able to do it up, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to lock the clutch up so we can do it up. And again, this is super simple. You just get some pair of washers, wind the springs all the way down. Very important note here, which we'll go through again later on. Jiggle it, make sure the plates, make sure there's no gap at the top here. It's physically possible to wind the clutch springs down, and this is misaligned. What happens there is you're not actually clamping the plates up at all, and the clutch doesn't work. And that also goes when we put the final assembly together. But just make sure that when you tighten these down, there's no gap between the top there. Again, you'd have to torque these up. You just literally wind them down till they bottom out, and all you're doing there is you're basically just preloading the clutch. The clutch is designed to take all that torque when you're riding, all the power, all the weight. So when we're just putting a little bit of torque through it just to tighten something up, that's sufficient. You don't need to put all 4 springs in. Proper gear holding pieces if you really want. I've never had an issue using a 2p or a 1p coin. They're copper, they're soft, they just deform. The gears are steel, you're not going to cause any damage. So then torquing the clutch up.
This is another special tool you need.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll link this one.
We'll put a link in for that tool as well.
Please don't hit these with a hammer. What you do is you miss and you'll just knock one of the pillars straight off the side of your clutch, and then you'll need a new clutch. So all you do is you've already done this mod where this trick, you just do these up. Just put the 2p, wedge it nicely in, it wants to be well engaged, and then as you rotate this, it'll just hold it in place. And as soon as it picks up, the clutch will grip basically, and it won't slip at all. Look, you can just tighten it up with all that torque, like so.
I think I got that. Sorry.
We'll do the same trick on the other side, and then to do up again, don't forget, it's like having a process. We now need to do up on this side, so you need to flip the engine upside down because it basically spins backwards to tighten it up. Flip your castle nut tool over, just reduce the torque a little bit on this. And again, same thing, you just see that 2p will stop the gears from turning. The clutch won't slip because it's got those things done up. Make sure you don't drop the 2p in the engine. Immediately make sure you take it out. And that's it, they're both done up. Again, please don't rattle gun them. You will over torque them, you will just strip the threads. It will just come undone when you're riding it. You will crash and you will die. And then all we do then is we just undo our little mods to take the little washers out, and then we can actually fit the clutch faceplate on. But again, that's a really safe way of doing it. There's absolutely no risk of you breaking anything. You're not going to damage the teeth. You're not going to break bits of your clutch off. You don't need to buy a special tool just to try and hold the clutch basket. And even then, it's not great, those clutch tools, because these aluminium pillars, they're a cast pillar, they're notoriously weak. So if again you try and hold those and put load through it, you do just risk breaking them off. So all we do there is take your washers, leave the springs on, lie the engine on its back,
The other two
drop the other two springs on, put your faceplate on.
Now I have seen you use the, what do you call for this? The whizzy gun?
No, I don't.
No?
No. I'll undo them with a whizzy gun. I take engines apart with a whizzy gun because for speed, but I don't do them up with a whizzy gun. Now this is the important bit I was just saying before.
Evenly.
So here, look, I'll just show you the gap. We don't want that. But basically, just make sure as you're putting preload on these springs, there's no gap between here and here.
They push it out.
And again, don't wind one all the way down. Just do them a little bit at a time. Bit of patience again here. Don't just rattle one of them up. Just bounce between them. You're preloading springs again. You want everything to seat evenly. You don't want one of the springs to pop off the back of the faceplate. So I just do 5 or 6 turns per side and just keep crossing the way. Right, we're basically done now. Just one thing a lot of people just be mindful of. This random washer just sits on there, doesn't go down to a face, it actually sits on this little step and just sits against this face, works against the shoulder here. So it is designed to float in the middle of space, in case you ever wondered, if you ever saw that. And then that literally just leaves the last job. Pair of dowels in, new gasket, and then bolt the cover up. And she's done. So again, just as a reminder, a bit like the hit, I'll just show you for reference, just like the hint I said to you earlier.
Just go around here.
Before you do that, if you're just not sure about bolt length, like you've got 2 here that are slightly different lengths, if you put them all in loosely, you'll notice that the gap between this long bolt, when it's gone in, is exactly the same as this short bolt. So if you're not sure, before you tighten anything up,
just put them all in. And
just drop them all in, and if you've got that same amount of overhang on all of them, then you know you've put all the right bolts in the right holes. Obviously, if you wanted to mark them up as you go, so be it. That's it.
Right, so this is the uprated what, Sean?
So this is the cam tensioner plunger upgrade.
Yeah.
Like I say, you can get them in acetal and brass are common. This is a separate one that I've had made, so ignore that. But
normally
again,
they are rubber and they wear really quickly.
Yeah, the little
and
ones.
You normally find them when you drain your oil out.
So just to show you on the engine, you wouldn't even have to take this out of the bike, but you would have dropped your oil at this point, so you wouldn't have any oil in the engine. You just undo this one, hold it with your finger because it will spring out because there's a long spring in there, like that. You'll probably just have to put something in like a pick. So you see I'm not going to push it inside, just sort of find it, drag it back. May take a second. You will hook onto it, and so there she is, comes out. And all then you just literally do is slide the new one back in again. Spring goes in with the coily bit at the top, just sits inside like that. And again, all you do here is a bit of a juggling act. We just sort of compress the spring carefully. Don't trap the spring; it'll sort of wiggle around. It's quite tricky to do that, but again, just give it a turn. Once you get it started, that's it. And then just nip that up exactly the same as you would your sump plug.
And that is probably the cheapest and best
reliability thing for
reliability upgrade you can do on these engines. Because I've often seen that little rubber cap on top of there come out when I'm doing an oil change, and then that's going to cause you all sorts of problems because there's going to be more.
It just risks the cam chain jumping basically.
Yeah. So yeah, well worth doing to save yourself a lot of money for the couple of quid that it's going to cost you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one complete 2024 engine ready for the season.
So just some of the tools again that I use. There are other things you can do, but always have a torque wrench. The highest torque I think that we put on these is 42 Newton meters, and the lowest is 8. So as long as you get that range. Castle nut tool for doing up the clutch and oil spinner.
A 2p.
A 2p that just helps to hold the gears when you do the clutch up. Valve lapping bits, so again a simple valve lapping tool and some paste. Flywheel puller tool for pulling off your flywheel. And then the sort of valve setting tool. You don't need this tool, but it does make it easier. A set of feeler gauges. And then again, if you ever do any work with taking your head apart, you'll just need a valve compression tool like that.
Right guys, this is the 2024 engine that I'll be using for this season then in Benidorm, Fab Championship, and going to do that Isle of Man trip. Hopefully guys, this video was really interesting for you guys. Just remember guys, like I said in the intro, this is a hints and tips video. You guys might rebuild engines totally different. Parker will have a different way, and some engine builders will have a different way, but all I can say is I've won 3 championships, and all of those championships were won with Sean engines in. So I really trust how he does things, but you guys might have a better way of doing it. You might have ways that you do it. And just remember guys as well, we ain't trying to create the fastest engine here. These are stock engines, or stock-ish engines that we're using here. So a lot of you guys might comment and say, well, I do this, I get more horsepower. You might well do, but you remember guys, we've got a 15 horsepower limit, and I like a good reliable engine. I'm not trying to hit that 15 horsepower limit. If we get 14 free out of this, I'll be well happy. So just remember guys, that you might have better ways of doing it, but Sean, I trust the way he does things. So guys, hopefully this video has been really interesting for you, give you some hints and tips of maybe getting maybe rebuilding an engine yourself, or whether you're going to give it to someone like Aaron Parker who's going to go rebuild it herself. If you enjoyed this video guys, I'd really appreciate if you could hit the thumbs up down below. If you want to watch more videos, hit this button here. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you could by hitting this button here. Thanks guys for watching, and my next video will be probably me down Ella Park running this engine in. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.